Good. So I was asked to basically summarize 12 months of my life into 10 minutes. And I've been telling everybody this has been the busiest year of my life, probably. So we'll see how this goes. You're getting the highlights. So yeah, I'm a professional botanist, a professional ecologist. That's me on Twitter. I'm kind of shifting more to Instagram now in the light of everything that's happening. Based in Inverness, grew up in Edinburgh. Did a countryside management course at SRUC, which was really broad, but I really focused in on the ecology stuff. But I've got to say, I really benefited a lot from just how sort of broad the course was and how much sort of what's the word I'm looking for? How much that kind of informed how I look at things in ecology with the sort of added context of everything else around it. So I started off with birds, who kind of moved into invertebrates, and this is basically the order of my learning and how I moved into botany and now slightly into biology as well. So this was actually the first site I ever did consultant ecology on. I was doing bird surveys. There's 3 Munros. It's a huge highland estate. Little did this bird consultant know I was working on my botany in order to sort of make a career shift. So this is where I really sort of cut my teeth, was in these sort of alpine plants. A lot of Scotland's really special species. Had a great time. But at the same time, I was also doing a student placement at Lochleven with Nature Scott, who were S&H at the time. And so the guy who got me involved in this job, and then the guy who I was working with at Lochleven, Jeremy, opened my eyes to this idea of just going places to see nice things, which I think everybody here probably appreciates. So I spent, and still do spend, an awful lot of time visiting SSSIs or important plant areas, or anywhere that's gonna show me some nice stuff, and sort of just absorb it all through my camera. So that's pretty much how I learnt and how I've ended up being a botanist professionally. So I'll take you back to the start of the year. Peatland surveys. There's not a lot you can do in sort of winter in terms of plants other than peatland surveys, because all you really need to be able to do is see the ground and walk over it. So these are sort of bread and butter surveys. And this was the first sort of botanical-ish work that I ever did, was peatland surveys. So it was my sort of it's a relatively easy thing. You walk along, you stick a probe in the ground, measure its depth, walk along again. So it's pretty easy, and it's a great and certainly it's quite a good way, I think, for graduates probably to get into ecological surveying, because it's easy to get in and you can learn on the job. I mean, I now whizzed through it, but probably spend more time looking at sphagnum than I do actually peat probing on these surveys. Next up, herbivore impact assessments. This is another sort of bread and butter survey. It's really like prevalent in Scotland. We've got a lot of places where we've got an awful lot of deer. So this is something that's really worth learning, and it really actually opened my eyes to Scotland's ecology and sort of the poor state of things, unfortunately. But as a result, you do end up working on some really amazing sites. So Loch Arcade Pinewoods is community owned alongside Woodland Trust Scotland. So it's been great working there. This has been my 2nd year I've worked there, and you can see the change in the place and just seeing the community and everybody managing it for the betterment of nature. And whilst you're doing that, you see lots of nice things. So here's one nice thing that I saw, which was Calura calyptrifolia. I have got all the names, unfortunately. I've hidden them behind myself down here. But this is a probably carnivorous liverwort that sort of takes. Dave will have to keep me in check with this, but they take sort of microorganisms into the leaves, and it's thought that they gain sort of nutrition from that. So that's pretty cool. Next was probably the biggest site I've ever taken on myself. So it was a big survey in Corrie and Glen Nevis. Well, it's sort of 2 corries right up to the top of one of the Munros in the sort of Western Moors. So here my main aim was to map the entire thing. I'm still bending my head around QGIS. Phase 1 habitats, that's easy enough. I've got that sorted. It's working out how to map all the MVC stuff. But this is one of the benefits that I've found of being self-employed, is that, and this has also been relayed to me by consultants who've gone self-employed themselves, who are a bit more experienced than me. They've said that they've spent maybe 10 years in a consultancy working for a company. And if you have a problem like QGIS or mapping or whatever, you go to the GIS specialist and they do it for you. You're not learning yourself. Whereas if I've got a problem, I've got to work it out. Fortunately, I have got lots of friends. Fraser sat in the audience who's helped me out a lot with this sort of stuff. But I really find that I'm really able to sort of progress my career in the direction that I'd like to progress it. So this survey was fantastic. I think there is actually some of this is on one of the boards just next door. But I mean, I was covering all the way from down on the floodplain with what is now Tropdaris verticillata, which was Whirl Caraway, through the sort of floodplain with lovely orchids into sort of submontane woodland, up into montane woodland with Salix marshnites, all the way up into the snowbed with lovely plants like Sebaldia, and some nice bryophytes as well. But there was one point, this is probably my best find to date, so I am going to boast about it. I was making my way down and there's a big hunk of limestone, actually, that's it right in the middle there. The big hunk of limestone Shin McIntosh had been up to and recorded a bunch of nice stuff. But I was sort of further up to the left, up in this quarry, coming down off the top. And I saw some Arabis petrea, which was really nice. And I was like, oh, I hadn't seen that yet, other than at the limestone. So I sort of thought, there must be limestone here then. Walked a little bit further down, a few nice bits and pieces here. And then suddenly this massive sedge, which I would not have known what it was if I hadn't done the site condition monitoring for Ben Eshkenich the previous year. And it was a new site for Carex norvegica. Which is, I mean, you can read about it next door, but I mean, that pretty much fueled me for the rest of the year. I mean, I didn't need to eat, basically. This is what I live on. So that was just fantastic, seeing you know, finding new places, finding new things in new places was great. And then I went on holiday, but I botanized for the whole time, so basically got no rest. But this is Sandy in Orkney. Which is a fantastic place, so a great place to see oyster plant. And then back to the peatlands. I won't say much on that because Alistair's about to cover that. Yeah, more peatlands. But whilst I'm doing a lot of these jobs, I quite often take little sort of side quests, I suppose you could say. I'm always all over the BSBI maps and seeing what's where. And so I ended up checking out a few records for pyramidal bugle. I refound one site which is, I don't know, from the early 2000s it had last been seen, and then found a bunch of new sites for it, and then also rock whitebeam in, I think it's at Strathbrora, kind of expanded the known range of that just because I went out after we'd finished work and was like, oh, let's go and look for rock whitebeam. So yeah, it's great being self-employed because you can, if you work hard enough, then you make more time for yourself to do the things that you want to do. Speaking of things I want to do, Mar Lodge recording week was fantastic. It was really great to be working with a bunch of really great botanists. Something that some people I think are concerned about going self-employed is being on your own. I've not found that at all. It's almost impossible to avoid somebody I know, especially places like this. And the great thing about it is that sometimes I feel, because I kind of learnt my botany on my own, it's a bit messy the way in which I learnt. So there's certain things I'm not so good at, like keying things out. But there's always somebody there who's keen to help you get better, but they're never pushing you. It's so, I don't know, it's just, they're never going, oh, you're not doing this right. It's always, oh, do you want to get better at this? Oh, I can help you. So I really admire the botanical community for that. These are some nice things that we saw there. I won't talk about this necessarily. We've had that, frankly, tiresomely large patch of Diphasiaster because they're in. I think we were walking for about 2 kilometers recording it. It was ridiculous. And I've still not seen Carex lacanale, but we did find Carex helvola, which is the hybrid between that and Canescens, I think it was. So yeah, anyway, on to the next survey. This was doing a wild trees survey. If you want to know more about that, then you can chat to James at Trees for Life. But this is quite it's a new survey methodology. It's trying to redirect efforts away from all of this sort of people going, oh, well, we want more woodland, let's just plant a load of trees, and make them think a bit more about the ecosystem and what it is that we're really trying to protect. So we'll go out and we'll walk up all the rivers, all the watercourses, and survey and find all of the what we call relictual species. So these are usually ancient woodland indicators, you know, whether these are plants or bryophytes or lichens. If I bump into any other nice stuff, which I did, then that's always good. And then it's also recording all the trees, and it basically the survey shows that all the trees are now, all the diversity is being confined to the steep places, and saying that, you know, all you need to do is stick up a fence, and all of this diversity should burst out from within the gorges. But one thing that I found whilst doing that survey was that I don't like tooting my own trumpet, but I think James said it himself, was that he doesn't know many people who'd be able to do this survey and cover such a broad range of taxa. So I'm doing the wildflowers, the trees, the ferns, and all of this, but also moving into, you know, oceanic liverworts, old growth lichens, amazing oceanic lichens, and occasionally doing invertebrates too. So there is benefit to being a bit more of a generalist. You don't have to focus down into whatever it is that you think you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. Basically you're always learning. I certainly am. Next was call. I can't say much about this because the report hasn't been published, but some really fantastic species out there. I had a moment where I thought I was a terrible botanist because I hadn't found any Irish ladytresses. Having spoken to people on Tyree, Tyree had a poor year. I checked other sites away from the SSSI that I was monitoring that had 50 spikes in the past, not one. And then one day when I was walking about in the rain, it had been raining heavily, so a lot of species I was meant to be looking for were way under the water. I was looking at bog hairgrass, which might be in the background of that image. And I was looking at it and going, hold on a second, what is that? And got my camera out, which fortunately does underwater photography. And found one single spike of Irish ladystress is growing under about 20 centimetres of water. So I can now say to Nature Scott that it's not for a lack of effort that I didn't find any. And then speaking of being self-employed, I have plenty of spare time to do things that I want to do. So one of the things I've been trying to do is kind of push forward mountain birch woodland restoration in Scotland. I won't talk a lot about this because there's now quite a lot going online. I think there's meant to be a YouTube video maybe being released today, but it's great to be able to sort of develop in ways that I want to, you know, go into lines of sort of research that I'd like to go into, because of the spare time I have as a result of being self-employed. And then finally, now it's time for me to try and chill out, which I'm doing a dreadful job of because I've just offered my services to Jonathan. But yeah, I'm trying.
Have 30 seconds.
Oh well, go for it. But yeah, no, I'm trying to chill out now. I'm doing a terrible job. Yeah, go quick.
So there's just enough time for a single question. Anybody? Yeah, over there.
Good.
Hi Gus, it's Louise Ross from Scotland's Rural College.
Mm-hmm.
I've just recently taken over the programme leadership for the course you did, which is now Wildlife and Conservation Management. We've got some aspiring botanists amongst the students, so I was just wondering what advice would you give to them if they want to pursue the sort of career that you're carving out yourself? What sort of skills should they be looking to gain and so on?
So Twitter's dying, unfortunately, but I have to attribute an awful lot of my work to Twitter. So I'd say maybe 80% of my work has been through people I've met through networking, mostly through Twitter, but also places like this, conferences, Reforesting Scotland Gathering, all sorts of places. So networking is really good, but also being able to demonstrate that you know stuff, which I do through putting up loads of pictures, and you guys can judge whether you think I know stuff or not based on that. But it is really through making those contacts, but then at the same time putting in the work behind the scenes is really important. I mean, I've basically my first 3 years of, well, pretty much all the years of college, if I had a day off, I was out looking at stuff, whether that was on the campus or down D-side volunteering. So yeah, both putting in the work behind the scenes, but then asking for help because it's out there. I mean, this room is full of it. So